Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's Lunch and Learn. I'd like to begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land that each of us are joining from. For me, that's the Darkinjung people, and I pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. My name's Sally, and I am the IEA Policy Manager here at Disability Employment Australia, and I'll be your host for today's Lunch and Learn session. If you would like to turn on the live captions, Henif will post the instructions and the link for those in the chat. And just a reminder that today's session will also be recorded, so please keep that in mind. These Lunch and Learn sessions are a partnership between Disability Employment Australia and the Centre for Inclusive Employment. And they aim to provide you with practical and real world advice and ideas that you can take with you as you continue delivering your employment services under this new IEA contract. Today's topic is Engage to Empower, Building Employer Relationships, and we are joined by Amy Worley, who's the CEO, and Nick Hoskins, who is the Relationship Manager at Australian Disability Network. Both Amy and Nick come to us with wide-ranging experience in building relationships, especially relationships that revolve around employment. And they're here today to share their experiences and advice and share that with us, as well as some resources and some other takeaways as well. There'll be plenty of time to ask questions of both Nick and Amy. So if you do have questions, please pop them in the chat and we'll come to those at the end. And a copy of today's presentation, any resources and the recording will be shared with you after the end of the presentation. So I'll now hand over to Amy and Nick. Thank you.
Me speaking. Thank you very much, Sally. And thank you to DEA for inviting us to be part of this Lunch and Learn series. It is a very exciting time for the sector, and I appreciate Australian Disability Network being invited. My name is Amy Worley. As Sally mentioned, I'm the CEO of Australian Disability Network. I recently rejoined the organisation on the 1st of September, having had a few years out of the business and previously working in the organisation for 10 years before that. I'm really excited that we have the opportunity to share some of our experiences with working with employers on how they build disability confidence, and particularly aim to provide you with some examples that you can use in your day-to-day work. So I'll be co-presenting this session with my fabulous colleague, Nick. And Nick is a relationship manager who works closely with a number of our members across the Australian Disability Network. So before we get into the content, I would too also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land in which we meet today and acknowledge their connection to land, sea and community. I'm on the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and I also pay my respects to people, the cultures and the elders of Indigenous communities, both past and present. And so as Sally mentioned, the objective of our session today, Nick and I are going to tag team the presentation and, if you like, use a sort of a fireside chat approach to be able to share some of the examples from Australian Disability Network in how we engage with employers. Examples of how to build meaningful relationships with employers and effective engagement, and what that looks like in practice. Our goal is to provide you with some practical tips that you can use, as I say, in your day-to-day work, with the ambition of making sure that you can create mutual benefit and mutual success for your participants and for the employers that you engage with. As Sally said, there'll also be time for questions at the end, so please feel free to start scribbling those questions that we can answer at the end of our presentation. So to start off with, I wanted to share a little bit more about Australian Disability Network, which throughout the presentation, I'll use the shortened name of AusDN. just for speed. The Australian Disability Network is a national not-for-profit organisation that works in partnership with our member organisations, who are generally large private and public organisations, including not-for-profits, with a shared vision of creating a disability-confident Australia. We are very much driven by the belief that business is the mechanism for systemic change, particularly in advancing the inclusion of people with disability, both as employees, but also as customers. And we have done so for the last 25 years. We have over 440 organisations as part of our network, and we work closely with our members to support them to have the right behaviours, the right attitudes, the right systems and knowledge in place to welcome and include people with disability across the whole of their business. And the approach that we take and the way that we work has been the case since the organisation was founded by the previous CEO, Suzanne Colbert. I want to make sure that we collaborate and build strong relationships for change. And we influence change by building solutions for business and with business. It's through the investment of business, through their time and resources, combined with the insights and experience of people with disability, that our programs and solutions have been created. Our work is about creating a safe space for employers to ask questions and to seek solutions as it relates to disability inclusion in their business, while also providing an environment that challenges and pushes organisations to do more. And we do this also by being the go-to, if you like, on disability and business, disability inclusion and business. The other aspect of our work is providing an opportunity of the voice of business, or the voice of our members, to be shared as it relates to any policy reform that may impact them. An example of that would be sort of live at the moment is that we're seeking the responses and feedback from our members as it relates to the proposed changes to the Disability Discrimination Act. We want to make sure that their experiences is also heard. So all of the work that we do is with the intention of advancing disability inclusion, advancing the employment of people with disability, advancing the participation, choice and access that people with disability have across all of our community. And so to demonstrate this further, I'm going to show you a couple of examples, or share with you some examples of the programmatic solutions that we've created, again, with our members over the years. And I do this, again, to demonstrate the opportunity that we have when we're working with employers by identifying gaps and finding solutions that work for mutual benefit. So the first one that I want to share with you is around our internship program, which was some of you may know from formerly known as the Stepping Into program. This was developed in 2005. It is an internship program specifically for university students with disability. Again, back in 2005, a number of our members, in fact, it was specifically law firms, had identified a gap in the number of students with disability joining their graduate program. So we worked together collaboratively with students with disability, the employers and ourselves to create what is now our internship program, and has delivered over 2,700 internships over the 20 years. Another example is our career mentoring program. Again, some of you may know it as PACE, Positive Action Towards Career Engagement. This was developed in 2013, again, developed with our members, providing an opportunity to build the disability confidence of employees within our member network, but also providing a mentoring opportunity for job seekers with disability. And we pair between 300 to 400 mentoring opportunities each year, and it's growing from strength to strength. The next two that I wanted to share was Employing 100 project, as well as our career pathway pilot. These are two examples where we receive government funding to take a very tailored and targeted approach, specifically on the employment of people with disability. So Employing 100 wrapped up last year. you may be able to tell from the name, Employing 100, the objective was to secure 100 roles for people with disability across 4 organisations that took part, which was the McDonald's, CSL, Marriott and Salvation Army. We managed to achieve 237 placements through that project, and we work closely with some of the organisations that's probably on the call today as well. The Career Pathways pilot program was an opportunity where, rather than focusing on bringing in talent, disabled talent, it was around looking at career pathways. So again, we worked with 4 organisations from our network to look at how we can ensure that people with disability have the same opportunities to progress their careers and move up and across within an organisation. The next 2 that I wanted to give you a little bit more information on was our Disability Confident Recruiter Program and our Access and Inclusion Index. These are examples of tools and programs that can support an organisation to understand where they're at on their journey to disability confidence. Often, when working with employers, we know what can get in the way for them making progress is the lack of understanding of what they need to do and whether they have the right systems and knowledge in place to ensure that they're providing an inclusive and accessible experience. And our Disability Confident Recruiter program specifically really focuses on the opportunity for an employer to demonstrate that they do provide an inclusive and accessible experience for people with disability as they go through the recruitment process. And our index provides an opportunity for an organisation to learn more about how they are inclusive and how they have inclusive and accessible practices across different areas of the business, such as marketing, procurement, product development, customer service, and so on. The final example I wanted to share, just to demonstrate the diversity in some of our programs and solutions, was a Directing Change scholarship program, which was run from 2022 to 2024. This was an opportunity where individuals with disability had the opportunity to access the Australian Institute of Company Directors courses to really build their skill sets and understanding of the role of directors on boards, and equally have the opportunity to increase the representation of people with disability at board level. And the key thing, as I mentioned before, around the objective of our programs is to bring business together, bring the lived experience of people with disability together to find solutions that provide a positive and mutual benefit for everybody involved. So I'm now going to hand over to Nick, who's going to share a little bit more about building employer engagement and what that means. Nick, over to you.
Nick speaking. Thank you so much, Amy, and thank you for sharing that overview, of course, of Australian Disability Network, who we are, what we do, and how we work in collaboration with our members to improve the employment of people with disability and the inclusion of people with disability. As Amy shared, and as you can see on screen, I'm now going to talk about building employer engagement. So I'm going to talk about some of the strategies that Australian Disability Network has previously implemented and some of the thinking and rationale behind our strategies, in the hope that this can support you, in the work that you do to continue to build your own networks and to build meaningful relationships with employers that will last into the future. So the first concept that I'd like to introduce you to, and this is a concept that we'll refer back later, so it's a central theme of the recommendations that we'd like to make. It's a central theme as well around the way that Australian Disability Network approaches the work that we do. So we're trying to unlock 3 locks. The first lock is understanding the business's culture and work environment. So what environment is this person with disability, or is this an appropriate environment for us to put people into? How can we work with businesses to improve those environments and cultures and make them the right place where both the employee can thrive, but also the employer can thrive and benefit from the inclusion of people with disability? Number 2 is understanding the skills, knowledge, and capability that's required. So when looking at the organization's objectives, what are the things that this member, a client of ours, this Inclusive Employment Australia participant, what are the things that they can do which are going to support the organization to achieve their objectives? How can we naturally integrate with the things that the organization is hoping to work on and to achieve? The final one here, if you could just be patient with me for a moment. Oops, sorry, it's doing something funny. Thank you so much for your patience with me, just shuffling a few things around on my screen. The final one there is providing support throughout the process. And so that is maintaining long-term connections and connections that last and connections that matter. We don't want our relationship with an organization to be a sugar hit or a one-time interaction. We want to build long-term change and long-term connection and to bring those organizations along for the journey. And certainly in the Inclusive Employment Australia space, we see value there as well. In maintaining those long-term connections with the partners that you have so that they keep coming back, keep absorbing your clients and keep bringing them into the wider workforce as, of course, the end goal. Amy, I want to throw to you here. Is there any additional comments that you'd like to make about the 3 locks and the way that they integrate with Australian Disability Network's work?
Amy speaking. Thank you, Nick. To build on Nick's comments, the real key to our engagement with members and building that lasting relationship is the ability to deeply listen to the organisation and understand where they're at now and where they want to get to. We know that quite often for organisations or individuals, probably should talk about the individuals rather than the organisation as a whole, because that's who we interact with, the humans themselves. Often when there is a fear of getting it wrong, it holds people back to make a start or to get started. And so sometimes that may feel as if it's that they're not interested or don't want to move forward or understand why disability inclusion is important, but it could be coming from a place of fear or lack of understanding. And so provide an opportunity to listen and understand their position, where they're at now, both as an individual and as a whole organisation, can really help you then with those first 2 unlocks around understanding the business culture and the work environment, but equally understanding where the organisation is trying to get to, what skills and behaviours they have, and that they're seeking. So those skills and behaviours can equally be the skills and behaviours they're looking to recruit for, the talent that they want to build into their organisation, but equally understanding, if you like, the disability confidence of their organisation. What is the sense of disability confidence across the business? So that fear can get in the way of them making the first step, and is often again which leads into lock 3 around providing support throughout the process, is being available and clarifying how we can support and step out the steps to take to build disability confidence. And so between those 3 aspects and the deep listening to understand, to help find solutions together is our effective way of helping us build those relationships.
Nick speaking. Thank you so much for adding that additional detail there, Amy. I'd like to bring us forward to the reason why this work matters. Of course, I'm sure a lot of people in the room are on the page with this is the right thing to do. We want to create a world where people with disability can be meaningfully included in the workforce. But when we're looking at those points that we've just discussed around understanding the business's existing culture, meeting with the business where they're at and progressing together, these are some of the common things that we find resonate with business and can help them to understand the importance of including people with disability meaningfully in their workforce and to having meaningful strategy around disability inclusion. So the 5 R's that Australian Disability Network works to and promotes are recruitment, retention, reputation, rights, and risk. So recruitment, we know that the Australian population, 1 in 5 people, as per the official numbers, I personally feel like it might be a little bit higher, depending on how people choose to self-identify and self-report, but based on official numbers, 1 in 5 Australians are people with disability. In the median working age of about 45, that's 1 in 6. So organisations want to and should want to benefit from hiring from the entire talent pool to make sure that they can find the best, most suitable person for the position that they have available. Also knowing, of course, disability can be something that is had from birth, but it can also be acquired later in life. And that can mean that people might be looking to reintegrate and use the services of Inclusive Employment Australia to reintegrate back into workforces where they already have lots of great skills and experience that those employers should want to seize upon. Retention, there is a good amount of research showing that people with disability and organizations that employ people with disability will benefit from increased retention rates. So that brings so many numerous business benefits. It brings reduced training costs, reduced hiring costs. It also brings benefits to workplace culture and knowledge that can only happen when we have those people in an organization who have been in that position for a long time. And I'm sure that we've all worked in positions where we know someone who's been with the company for 20 years, and they just bring so much valuable knowledge and experience that we wouldn't have were they not there, were they not able to share with us the transitions that the company has gone through over that period. So retention and increased retention rates is a benefit to business of employing people with disability. Reputation, rights, and risk, I want to group together for simplicity, and I want to say that people with disability have rights, as we all know, protected by things like the Disability Discrimination Act. There are legal and reputational risks for organizations that don't uphold and support those rights. Of course, on the other hand, there's also positive benefits to organizations in terms of reputation for employing and supporting people with disability. So being known as an employer of choice for people with disability can mean that that organization's benefits from the top talent of the disability population. In terms of being an inclusive brand, the organisation also benefits from having 1 in 5 consumers or 1 in 5 Australians being promoters of that brand and sharing positive opinions about that brand with their family, friends, loved ones, which can be such an asset to a business. So these 5 R's hopefully are helpful tools to help you promote the why behind disability inclusion to organisations that you might be working with as a starting point. Hopefully they're on board with the most important R, which is not mentioned here, right? It's the right thing to do. But these can be some additional points which can help guide business to the benefits directly to them for engaging in Inclusive Employment Australia initiatives and for engaging in disability inclusion more broadly. I want to play a quick video for you here. Now, this is a short snippet only. It's from a video that Australian Disability Network promoted for International Day of People with Disability last year. And it just complements our conversation about the 5 R's a little bit further and speaks further to some of those business benefits. So I'll let this play before moving on to the next component.
There are 5.5 million people with disability in Australia. We're talented, agile, resilient, and have great hair. Navigating a world that's been designed without us.
Not to mention the fact that we're a massive market of potential customers.
Cheers. What an incredible opportunity for a business to hire from this talent pool. I can only begin to imagine the benefits, like
having a more engaging workplace culture.
A workplace that reflects customers and community. Bye-bye.
Improved brand reputation.
Increased productivity.
Higher employee retention rates.
Nick speaking quickly, just jumping to the next slide so that the next one doesn't autoplay there. But hopefully that video gives you a sense of the ways that we can speak to business about where they are and the benefits that employing with people with disability can bring to their organization. Organizations are often led by some of those factors, and so meeting them where they are, identifying those priorities and working collaboratively with them to show how your participants can help complement those priorities can bring them into the conversation for the short and long term. We are going to move forward to a little bit of a conversation or a fireside chat between Amy and I now about some of the things that Australian Disability Network have done and some of the ways that you can lean on and leverage some of our experiences and knowledge. Of course, we will have that Q&A portion shortly, so please keep those questions coming. I can't see how many, but I can see a little red dot at the top of my screen showing me that there's at least a few. So please do keep those piling up, and we're excited to get the chance to explore those with you shortly. The first question that we see on screen here is, how do you support employees to commit to creating inclusive and accessible workplaces? I want to share a few of my thoughts quickly, and then I'm going to throw to Amy to add a little bit of additional detail from her experience as well. So in terms of my thoughts, the key parts that I would say here is having an environment that's set up for success. So that's a big part of Australian Disability Network's work, is working with organisations to help them identify the strengths and weaknesses of things like their recruitment processes. So I think working with employers, not just to place a single candidate, but building long-term meaningful relationships with employers, where we're working with them to build better business cultures, physical and digital environments that are accessible to people with disability, can lead to meaningful change in this area. I also think it's important to hear all of the voices in the room. So there's your voice as an IEA provider. There's also the voice of the employer, and there's the voice of lived experience in the room. So it's important to speak to and be guided by each of those individuals in practice. I know that when I'm working with our member organizations, I always lean on the lived experience of people who actually live and work there, because they live and breathe that organization, and they can just offer so much more valuable insight than I can as someone who's looking into the organization from the outside. Also, meeting organizations where we are, I know I've spoken to that a little bit, but meeting organizations at their current position where they are, looking at their priorities, strengths and weaknesses, and aiming to collaborate and work with them to achieve those goals. Those are some of my thoughts. Amy, I'd love to throw to you to expand or to add to what I've shared.
Me speaking. Thank you, Nick. I know we've got a couple more questions, so I'll be fairly short because I'm conscious of time. But building on what Nick has already said, I think one of the things that is good to call out here is the clarity on the expectation. So when we work with employers, of course, it's about listening to understand their needs and also being able to demonstrate some potential ways of working with them. But it's also been really clear about what's to come. So if we're starting to work with an organization, we make sure that we're really clear on what we can offer, what's the responsibility of us, what's the responsibility of them, what should they expect from us for support, and so that there aren't anything sort of unintended surprises along the way, and clarity on who will do what, and that clarity on the ongoing support. So it is, as you said before, it's not just a short time thing. It is an opportunity to stay connected throughout the experience and the change.
Nick speaking. Thank you so much, Amy. And I feel like that supports us into our next conversation point, which is when have you seen an employer move from engagement to action?
Amy speaking. Great question, and I appreciate the session today is focusing on engagement, but which is where I'll keep it. But obviously, we want to engage with employers, with businesses, for them to take action. And so I thought this would be a good example to share. And we've got the examples, particularly through the Employing 100 and some other projects we've led in the past. And one that we had quite some time ago was called the High Growth Jobs Project, which was based here in New South Wales. And really the focus there is about in the title, with the high growth jobs. So it was seeking to connect with employers that were looking to recruit regularly or a high volume of individuals, because it provides us an opportunity to put forward a particular case or solution that we have talented people with disability that can meet their business objective, which is to hire more people. And so again, through the work of IEAs and back then it was DES, being able to identify the opportunities within an organisation, understand their objectives, and then provide effective solutions that will not only meet their talent need, but also will benefit in terms of their diversity and inclusion and equity strategies as well. So really, again, connecting to that business strategy as well as the individual opportunities for people with disability in those roles. And in terms of when we've seen organizations move from engagement to action, it's when that trust has been built. And again, to reiterate, it's not a one-time conversation. And equally, when we start working with an employer, while they may want to achieve A, B, and C, we need to recognize that it may be step A first, and take longer before we can move on to the next piece. And so recognizing that we need to build that trust with an organization in how we work, and that we will continue to deliver, and making sure that timing of when we can engage to act is right for them and for us. So that, again, mutual benefit and working together collaboratively is being key.
Nick speaking. Thank you so much, Amy. And our last question for Amy and I to discuss, again, before we open up to the chance for you to ask us some questions, so please do keep those questions coming. The question is, what are your top tips on engaging with employers? Again, I'll share some thoughts and then I'll throw to Amy to complement and add some additional insights. The comments from me is to positively represent your brand. So brand reputation isn't something that just belongs to marketing. It's something that we all are responsible for. So I would encourage us to think about how we're acting and conducting ourselves in a professional way, really representing the best for our organization, but also how we're positively representing the disability community and disability inclusion movements. So I would first raise that. The second point that I would say is to clearly demonstrate the value of your service. So what is the value? Knowing the organization's needs that you can connect with and clearly demonstrate and provide value to that organization. My final thought here is to make it simple. So we want to avoid really complicated, drawn out processes with lots of delays, as this can be really difficult for organizations to navigate through, and they may lose motivation through that process. So the simpler, the clearer, the easier that we can make our service offering, and the more that we can guide our members through, or our organizations through, that conversation, the more that we can end in that final result we're after, which is placing people with those organizations and seeing them prosper and succeed over the long term. Amy, is there any additional comments that you'd like to make here, or any top tips that you have for our audience today?
Amy speaking. Yeah, fabulous. Again, to build on, and I'll keep it simple too. I'll take your advice straight from the bat. So firstly, listen. It really is about listening to understand when we're working with engaging with employers. Second piece is around the approach of a dual customer. So certainly for you working in IEAs, you have two customers. You have the employers and you also have your participants. And so demonstrating that mutual benefit and thinking about the experiences of your dual customer, I think, is critical in engaging with employers. And the third I would say is don't be afraid of storytelling. Obviously, being mindful of confidentiality, so not necessarily sharing information that is not appropriate, but the storytellings that you can share with employers of experiences you've had and where you've seen success. I think you can never underestimate the power of storytelling in how you demonstrate impact and how you demonstrate positive outcomes.
Nick speaking. Thank you, Sally. Thank you. Sorry, Amy. I'm thinking about throwing over to Sally in a moment. Just before I do that, I'd like to just quickly recap those 3 locks. So those 3 locks are to, and thank you again for your patience with me. Those 3 locks are to understand the business culture and work environment, understand the skills and knowledge and capacity that's required. And the final one there is to provide support throughout the process. So thank you again for hearing directly from us. We're excited to answer some of your questions as they come through. I'll stop sharing my screen now and I'll throw it over to you, Sally.
Thank you, Nick, and thank you, Amy. All right, to the questions. There is a lot of positive thanks and appreciation coming through in the chat, both for the content that you've shared, but also for the concept of the 3 locks. That's certainly, it seems to have resonated really well with people. So just wanted to call that out before we dive into all the questions. So let me start here. Beyond the job board and the local network that providers might build for themselves, are there any tools or platforms where people might be able to collaborate with employers looking towards more strategic conversations and discussions around inclusive hiring and filling vacancies?
Nick speaking. Did you want to take this one, Amy, or would you like me to go first?
Right, you can go first if you have something. Just hand to me whenever you like.
Nick speaking, brilliant. Well, it's a really great question to think beyond the traditional job boards that we have access to. My recommendations are to look at an organization's bigger picture strategy. So lots of organizations will share things like their access and inclusion plans publicly. So looking at some of that public information that's available about an organization's disability strategy can help you when you are meeting with them to connect and align your conversation directly to some of those strategies and objectives. So that would be my immediate thought. I also would recommend being in the places that your employers are. So being on places like LinkedIn, being in places like expos that your employers are likely to attend can be a way that you can support networking and building some of those connections as well. Amy, is there anything that you wanted to add?
Amy speaking, no, I think you've answered it well. I think the local networks, which I think was also called out in the question anyway, are such a positive way. But again, you can link it then to either strategies or known business objectives for that organisation, whether it's directly related to accessibility or diversity inclusion or not. If there's anything related to talent, there's an opportunity.
Lovely, thanks both. And again, lots more positive feedback coming through on the content, even lots of comments saying people feel much more comfortable to connect with employers and putting some of those things that you've shared into practice. Nick, in your role as relationship manager, is there something that you might have sort of learned over time that's really helped shape the way that you have, I guess, developed in your practice that you might be willing to share with people?
Yeah, Nick speaking. And Amy also can speak to this, having been a relationship manager a while back in her career. But from my personal experience, I think it's really being guided by the organization. So knowing that I'm there to meet the member or the organization where they are and to work collaboratively with them to achieve some of their goals. So looking at the work that Australian Disability Network does, the kinds of tools, resources that we can offer, and trying to provide those to support the members' objectives. Also looking broader, so looking beyond what Australian Disability Network does. If there's things that an organization is trying to achieve that sit beyond what I can do, but it's still, it's supporting the cause which we're here to support, then linking the provider in or linking the organization in with those other external community providers. Amy, what's your thoughts on this? Do you have anything else that you'd like to complement?
Yeah, I think to take a slightly different tack to it would be probably what I used to do as a relationship manager, and what I really enjoyed doing and seemed to be effective too, was the regularity of contact. So if I get down to kind of the real nuts and bolts of engagement, which is really about building relationships. And so the consistency and the regularity of that connection opportunity with individuals from within business was where I saw a real sort of opportunity and growth. So you're building the trust. It doesn't mean that we kind of call them lots, but we just set a cadence that allows people to check in and reconnect regularly enough so that when that timing is ready for an organization to act, and in this case to recruit, then we're front of mind because we've built that relationship and trust with the individual. So yeah, that would be probably what I'd build on.
Thank you both for sharing those experiences and things that you have learned. Amy, towards the beginning of the presentation, you mentioned a number of offerings that AusDN has, including things like the PACE mentoring program, the Career Start, stepping into internships. There is quite a long list. If those have sort of resonated with people, maybe they have a participant on their caseload that they think might benefit from them, what's the best way for people to find out some more information and make those connections?
Amy speaking. Thanks, Sally. So, and actually there is a question in the Q&A area around our website and lists of employers. So I might answer the two things. So because I think they're linked, so that's perfect. Thank you. So yes, the internship program is open to university students currently. It's open to university students in penultimate and final year of study. And then our mentoring program is open to job seekers. So certainly if there's some clients or participants that you're working with that may benefit from mentoring, then on our website, and we can obviously make sure all of these links are sent through, there's an opportunity to apply to be a mentee, which would be fabulous. And on our website, we've also got a list of all of our members generally, so just the 400 organisations. I don't necessarily expect everyone to now look at the 400 organisations, but there's also under Disability Confident Recruiter, it lists the organisations that have achieved that status. So that has a very strong message in terms of their inclusive and accessible approaches, which can be useful as well.
Thank you, Amy. Nick, we might start with you on this one. What are some good things to say to employers when you're speaking with them for the first time? And should you ask if they prefer you to come in person or over the phone?
Oh, Nick speaking. A great question. So in terms of the first things that I would be doing when meeting a new organization is I would be trying to, as I said earlier, build on your brand reputation. So that's the brand reputation of your organization, the disability community. But in this particular conversation, I'm also thinking about your personal brand reputation and the reputation that you have with that direct contact. So I would be seeking to build some rapport with that contact in a professional way, getting to know them so that they understand a little bit about who you are and how you work and how you can work effectively together. I would also be seeking to be really clear about your service and what you can do and how you can support. I'd be seeking to be clear about what some of their objectives are and how that naturally links in with what you can do. And as Amy had shared earlier, thinking about and using that as a time for a call to action. So don't leave that meeting saying we'll be in touch. Try to leave that meeting saying, when is the next time that we'll be in touch? Because it can be hard to reach someone through email, whereas if they're on the phone to you, you can be a little bit cheeky and book your next meeting and really get into that diary a little bit sooner rather than trying to follow up later. I've found that is quite successful. In terms of in-person or online, of course, there's practicalities that you will consider to see what is going to be best. I find it really depends, by the employer. So your employer might have or your contact might have an accessibility requirement where they prefer online. They may just generally prefer online, or they may prefer in person. So I would put the offer to them if you can meet them in person, face to face, and say, would you like me to, or would you prefer to connect online, and to be guided by them in terms of their preference. Amy, is there anything you wanted to say here to add further?
Well, I think that's absolutely right. Maybe one thing I'd add is when you are, and it builds on what you were talking about your brand, when you are interacting with anybody, I think being able to demonstrate your understanding of inclusive communication is another benefit and opportunity. A slightly different example, but I hope it resonates. When we provide training to workforces, at the beginning of it, particularly when it's interactive, we set, if you like, the accessibility expectations of the meeting, and so we call out sort of the standards of accessibility that we'll use through that process. That slide is often one of the most supportive slides that individuals find, because they learn so much in the approach that we want to take. And so I would encourage you to think about when you're either trying to get a call or you're going to meet with someone, it's opportunities such as, please let me know if you have any accessibility requirements for our meeting. Again, not making any assumptions around whether the individuals that you're meeting with within the organisation need anything done differently, and adjustments that may need to be made. But you're also demonstrating your work in practice with everybody that you communicate with, not just your participants. And so I guess my point here would be to never underestimate the opportunity you have to influence change and to call out what inclusive practices look like in every interaction that you have.
Incredible. And we might just squish one last question in. I think we've got time. Would you do anything different if you were engaging with smaller employers compared to larger employers?
Amy speaking, I'm happy to take this, then that you can build it as you wish. Yeah, I mean, they are different different types of organizations. I recognize that. And as we said at the beginning, our experience is more with the larger organizations. But certainly with the smaller scale sized organizations, then I think that building of trust and relationship is even more important. And the other piece I would call out is that understanding who's who and the responsibilities within a small organization is a good opportunity. We've talked about building those relationships, but if individuals do move from a different organization, being able to maintain that connection with the business as well is important. And so sometimes that's easier to do in smaller organizations because there's less movement, but equally it can be harder if one person moves, then the whole relationship can drop off. So that thinking about the sort of other people within the organization that you connect with, but that building of trust and understanding their timings and how that fits with them, you know, such as there's an opportunity as we come up to the busy season, in fact we're probably already far in it, of the Christmas period. And so if we're thinking about retail, they might have a high demand for more talent during the retail space for Christmas. But equally, if they've already done the hiring, they're also in delivery mode in full pace. So we just got to expect that may not be the right time to try and initiate change or to do something they haven't done before.
Nick speaking. I just to complement Amy's response, I think when it is a small to medium enterprise, understanding their industry can be really helpful as well. So understanding the specific requirements of the world in which they operate, if it is a construction organization or whether it's architecture, whatever it might look like, the practicalities of that industry and having some understanding of the way that they work can support your conversations to be successful. As an example, when working, Amy mentioned retail workers and the practicality of things like Christmas. I know when working with retail organizations, the nature of their staff means that they're not computer-based, so we approach working with those organizations differently. If we're working with universities, they have academic and professional staff, so we approach, again, working with the nature of research grants and things like that to fit the nature of the organization. So I think there's a point there about really understanding the industry. And as Amy said, that also means that when someone moves between organizations, hopefully that might give you a contact at a new organization rather than losing someone, because you understand really well the space in which they work. If it is a small organization as well, that the strength of rapport and direct connection also goes up in value tenfold. So I would say those personal connections are so important in that type of environment.
Lovely. Thank you both. I think a couple more comments and questions have come in, but we have reached our time for today, and I know you all have plenty on your plates. So I'll go through and pick up on anything that we might not have had a chance to address. We'll see if we can address that after the session. Thank you, Amy and Nick, for coming along and sharing today. It's been incredibly insightful. Really appreciate you spending your time with us today. Thank you also to Hanif, who's been in the background making this all possible. We will be taking a break next week, but we'll be back the week after, which will be the 26th of November. We will be joined by Shay Weissy, and we will be looking at dyslexia in the workplace. So we look forward to having you join us all for that. And thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you both.